Welcome back to the Fulfilled Female Entrepreneur Podcast. It's your host, Cassandra Rosa. I am a certified coach and healer and intuitive business coach, and the mission behind all that I do is to help you to create a fulfilling life and an impactful business. Today, I'm really excited to have Vanja Banks on the podcast, and she's going to be talking about all things astrocartography. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm so excited to have Vanja on here today to talk about astrocartography. She was a guest on a prior podcast. We had met in person at an event a while ago, and she just has such a beautiful energy and shares so much goodness and wisdom on her pages and in her sessions. I can be a testament to that. I've had a couple sessions with her, and they've been so eye-opening and transformational. So first and foremost, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited for everyone to learn from all of your wisdom here today.
Thank you so much for having me back. Yeah, I guess it's been almost like 2 years to the dot, all like ish, right? Since we first had our initial recording. And I think we talked a lot about plant energy at that one and astroherbalism. And it was right before I went and did my yoga teacher training, actually. But yeah, so I'm really glad to be back. And yeah, just wanted to say, if the listeners haven't listen to the initial episode, that's a really great way to also learn a bit more about what I do. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about astrocartography. It's definitely one of my passions, and see what it uncovers for people.
Totally. And I'm going to leave a link to that first interview in the show notes, so you can definitely check it out. So I'm really excited to introduce you to people that haven't heard of you before, cross paths with you. So Vanja is a spiritual astrologer, and she has 200 hours of yoga teacher training and herbalism. And she operates on the belief that everything is energy. Through Astro Bloom, she applies the teachings of astrology and psychology and astroherbalism and yoga to restore energetic harmony and promote healing by helping others cultivate a deep connection to their authentic selves. Vanja provides one-on-one client support, leads monthly moon circles to promote healing of divine feminine energy, and creates an altar with art and herbal ritual tools to cultivate healing with astrologically customized self-care. She does have a one-on-one mentorship that's open for registration, so you can connect with her on Instagram for a call or check out her website, astrobloom.ca. I love that. I love how your beautiful moons that you create with all of your herbs was the way that we initially crossed paths at that market. I have one of them. I can see it right behind the computer here now, and it's just added so much beautiful energy to the space. So it's a little taste of you in my little office here.
Yeah, I love, seeing where they end up and thinking of my floral moons often in their homes, just kind of gracing, people's spaces with that like powerfully healing energy of plants and crystals. So I'm so happy to hear that you're enjoying it.
Yes, and she spoke about astroherbology in the first episode, so check that out. But we want to talk about astrocartography today because it's something that I've been curious about for a while. And then once I saw Vanja posting that she's, having those sessions now and started to share a little bit about it, I'm like, oh, the listeners would absolutely love this. So do you want to share a little bit about what astrocartography is for people that aren't familiar?
Yeah, for sure. So astrocartography is also called astrogeography. So just in case people have heard of these two terms, they are interchangeable. So it was created, I believe, in the 70s sometime, by a person called Jim Lewis. And he's sort of the founder of astrocartography. Astrocartography is, so if we think about astrology itself, astrology is really the language of the planets, right? And the sun and the moon. Um, and when we look at a person's birth chart, that is a snapshot of the sky the moment they were born, but from the specific location they were born in. And so what happens is we essentially map these planets in the sky, and we have, certain signs that then end up being on the eastern horizon being the rising sign, right? Or the ascendant. So based on your location. That's why your time and location is really important in astrology, because it tells us what sign was on the eastern horizon the moment you were born, changes signs every 2.5 hours. And this really tells us how your whole house system is going to end up in astrology. And for those that might not be super well versed in astrology, houses really just tell us kind of what area of your life is being impacted by the different signs and the different planets. So that's sort of basic astrology. And we need to know basic astrology to know how to delve deeper with astrocartography. So astrocartography is essentially the astrology of a geographical place. And so what we do in astrocartography is we essentially map these energetic lines from the planets, which were orbiting the Earth in a certain way, which were shining their energy onto the Earth in a certain way the moment a person was born. And by doing so, they create these energetic lines. And so essentially, when we're pulling up an astrocartography chart, it's like a big map of the world with these like almost like waves of planetary lines, of planetary energies. And the reason we want to do this is because it tells us, you know, by traveling to or relocating to a certain place on Earth, we can actually more consciously kind of call in the energy of that certain planet, of that planet's archetype, of its lessons, of its light and shadow expressions. And so we can be more conscious kind of co-creators in our own lives. Like, not that, I mean, we already are, but this is almost like a more, yeah, just more precise way of kind of consciously working with that energy. But the other way of thinking about it is also that we can also look at places we've maybe felt really drawn to, been really curious about, and see, like, are there any energetic lines that run through those places? And as a result, what is our soul being called to learn? Because we can see, like, what type of line is there, right? So what type of lessons, what types of opportunities will arise? And the one final thing I'll say about it is it really does have to be taken in tandem with your birth chart. So everyone's going to experience these planetary lines differently. The chart is going to be different, but it's also different because your own birth chart is different. So you kind of take them in tandem with one another.
So interesting. You explained that so clearly, though. I'm starting to see the picture, and it makes me curious thinking about certain geographical places that I've been drawn to, or like activations spiritually that have happened being at specific places. So now I'm curious to see how these lines interfere with these places that, you know, I've that homey feeling or I've had specific breakthroughs in. But I would love to know, for you, what's your experience been with the lines when you're looking at your own chart or your clients' charts? What are like some tangible examples for people to understand?
For
Even
sure.
better?
Yeah, so I mean, for myself, my own experience with astrocartography started really young. I was not conscious of it, but it started when my family moved here moved here as in Canada, Ontario, when I was 10. So I was actually born in Bosnia. And so when I relocated at the age of 10 to Ontario, I actually moved really close to my Mars and Sun line. And I already have a prominent in Mars and Sun placement in my chart. It's really close to this beginning of my 10th house of career. Well, they are both in my 10th house of career, but they're also really close to my midheaven, which is like, you know, how you sort of show up in the world, how you build your legacy, right? But by moving here, they actually moved even closer to my midheaven. And so it like made this big kind of like pronounced energy of Mars and Sun archetypes. And because everything is light and shadow, it's really forced me to deal with toxic masculine energy, to face that toxic masculine energy in my workplace, because I worked in academia for a long time. It mirrored that back to me, right? Of like not being in that healthy masculine. It forced me to face a lot of issues with just masculine energy in relationships, in my relationship with my parents, also like a lot of mirrored energy to me around just what it means to be balanced in the masculine and feminine, and what it means to actually be living from the divine expression of those energies. And when I say masculine and feminine, you know this, but just in case people don't, it's not necessarily anything to do with gender. We all have both of those energies in us, and it just has to do with the yin and the yang, like that duality of light and dark, yin and yang. So that was one of my experiences that was kind of subconscious for a long time. And it wasn't until I got further into astrology in about 2018 that I started actually uncovering more like realizations around all of this.
Hmm.
Uh, and I would say the pivotal moment for me also was when I traveled to my North Node line in astrocartography. So the North Node is basically like it's a really spiritual point in astrology. It's used a lot in like evolutionary astrology. It tells us like where our soul is evolving into, the energy that we have not had a lot of experience in our past lives. So it really abides by the principle of like reincarnation, which I really believe in. And basically, the North Node is like where you get the most spiritual fulfillment, but it also feels really uncomfortable.
Hmm.
But it's where you need to go. And what happened for me was like as a kid, I was like super obsessed with the UK. Like I just felt like I wanted to live there. I felt like there was just something about it. I had never even been there before.
Hmm.
And same thing, sometime in high school, I think I did a project on the Alhambra and the whole like southern Spain region of Granada and Andalusia. And then just one day it kind of struck me, this was when I first started looking into astrocartography of, what runs through these areas. And it actually was one of my North Node lines, because you do have multiple lines of each planet. Um, and so I went there and I did my yoga teacher training in Spain, and I did kind of a little like spiritual pilgrimage by myself for 8 weeks in the UK and in Spain. And it was just like it was uncomfortable. It was very, very much out of my comfort zone. I hadn't done a lot of solo traveling at that point, but it was so like it redirected my life path in so many ways, and it allowed me to meet people who really mirrored this energy to me of like where I was meant to be going. So yeah, these are two of my personal experiences, but just so it's not all about me, I do want to add that one of my recent mentorship clients, we talked a lot about astrocartography in my sessions with her, and one of the energies that she currently lives on is her Pluto line.
Hmm.
And this is a really intense energy to be on for a long period of time. It's really only like deeply scorpionic people who can handle this energy, and she is a Scorpio rising, so that makes sense. But at the same time, there's this theme of like constant death and rebirth in her life, like
Hmm.
also loss, like actual death, loss of family members, constant reinvention of the self, and just this kind of like exhaustion a little bit that comes from that. But also there is this deep inner knowing of the self, because
Hmm.
Pluto is all about getting to the depths of our soul. So because she's being invited into like this deep self-work, this deep uncovering of her soul, there's so much power there too. But so there's a light and a shadow in all of them. And these are just some of the examples that, I've come across in my own life and in my work with my clients.
Wow. I'm sure it gives like a new level of understanding of, this is why it's happening. Like
Yeah.
the light bulb moment after the thing. But also I would imagine that if there's specific lines that, you know, you have goals in your life aligned to, maybe making a trip or making a move to specific places, it would all be in alignment, which is really cool. So what's the most fulfilling part of doing astrocartography for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is like these light bulb moments. A lot of, I mean, what I really love with astrology is astrology in general, and this, I put astrocartography under this, umbrella, is really, first of all, yeah, the validation of maybe some harder experiences that you've had, right? Understanding like, okay, I'm not a victim. Like this is meant to happen because this is just part of my soul's plan. Like I just needed to go through this. And now I have this wisdom. Now I have the ability to take something out of this experience. And I think there's a deep empowerment piece that comes into play there. And so that I would say that is the most fulfilling thing for me is like really helping people see that they're not victims of the cosmos, they're not victims of the universe. They're actually either subconsciously or consciously co-creating their own reality. And in a lot of cases, it's just part of their soul contract to like to learn certain things. And when you look at things from that perspective, you can't be a victim anymore.
Mhm.
You very much are in that more empowered state. So yeah, I would say that's most fulfilling for me.
I love that awareness, that understanding, which can provide a lot of freedom for people, right? Because the
Exactly.
why is this happening to me is a big story that can happen when you're going through the thick of it. So I love that they can walk away with that. So if someone's never had an astrocartography reading, are there certain places that they should focus their attention on to see what lines are intersecting with those places in particular?
Yeah, for sure. So it really, like I said, it really does depend on the person, right? So first of all, I always like to look at people's like, especially if they live somewhere where they weren't born. I love to look at like, okay, what is the energy of the place where you are currently living, right? So
Okay.
what drew you to this place? Why are you kind of here? What are the opportunities that are present here? The other place would be, looking at places where maybe significant life events occurred. Maybe you got engaged somewhere, maybe you got married somewhere, maybe you went to school somewhere, maybe you started a new job somewhere, right? Like these big kind of transformative things that happen in your life. It's interesting to look at what happened there. And usually there starts to emerge kind of a story around the types of planetary energies that your soul is drawn to with these types of, big life events, relocations, stuff like that. And then the other two, I would say, is, looking at are there places that you have just felt really drawn to? Like I mentioned my example, of the UK and Spain. Are there places that you just feel like you belong to, and maybe you had never even been there, maybe you have been there and you just have that deep sense of belonging, right? So those places are always really interesting to take a look at because again it tells you like what is your soul craving.
Hmm.
And I would say the last one would also be, if in your own birth chart you have like a really pronounced signature where there's like one planet that's being really highlighted, like let's say you have a lot of energy kind of being funneled into like your Venus placement or something like that, then I would say you definitely want to look at where those lines are because there's a lot of lessons for you to be learned around that planet's energy. So more consciously working with that energy would be important.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. A couple of questions came to mind. What about like the place that you're born? Is there any significance of what line runs through this place that you're born?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about the place that you're born in is because essentially when we pull up like an astrocartography map, what we can do is we essentially like every place that we pick, we pull up your birth chart for that place, but
Okay.
accounting for the time zone difference. And
Okay.
so because you're pulling up essentially your birth chart for the place you were born in, it just ends up being your birth chart. But
Hmm.
this means that you normally would have certain lines there depending on, so let's say you have like a planet near your ascendant sign or near your midheaven, like near those angles that I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
those would be the lines that would be pronounced there. So it depends on where those angles are. So, like, was there a planet rising on the eastern horizon when you were born? Was there a planet that was setting on the western horizon the moment you were born? So those would be the lines that are there. And essentially, it would be like in a way, your soul did pick that place because it wanted you to experience your birth chart in that specific way. But sometimes staying in that same place is not enough. Like maybe there's maybe just the opportunities don't present themselves in the same way, right? Maybe you really need to learn the archetype of a certain planet in like many different variations of energy, right? So that's where sometimes we just need to leave the place that we were born in and experience that energy in a different way somewhere else, if that makes sense.
Oh, that resonates so deeply for me specifically, even. So I love that. And it's interesting talking about the full circle moment of us knowing each other for a couple of years. I was going through an old journal and I actually found the notes that I had from the session with you, like the astrology, like kind of general session, and there's no fire in my chart. So that mean if I'm seeking fire, because that's not innately within me, that I should go to these places where those planets are associated with, because that's missing. I'm doing air quotes for people that are listening to the podcast for me.
Yeah, no, and like that for sure. So when we look at elements too, you know, it's really important to also consider that when let's say you're picking a place to relocate to, and you know you have no fire in your chart. Well, you probably want to go somewhere that's like warm and dry, right? Because you want to environmentally connect with that element, but then you might also want to choose like a Mars line, right? Again, Mars line will definitely get you in touch with your masculine energy, and it is a lot of go, go, go energy, but maybe that's what you need, especially if you have a weak Mars, if you don't have a lot of fire. So yeah, you're very on point with that.
Interesting. I love that. Thanks for all this wisdom. I'm learning so much myself by this.
The other thing I actually just wanted to also add, because I think people get kind of mixed up with this, or it's a common question anyway, is, you know, I would say that astrocartography does work best when it's more long-term, right? So if you're going to travel somewhere for like a week, let's say, yeah, you will feel that energy. You'll get in touch with it. But at the same time, some of those big life-changing moments and things like that might not necessarily have the time to occur. So when we think about astrocartography, it is a bit more long-term. In my personal experience, you know, like I've done some traveling where I've been away for sort of 6-8 weeks. I think that's a good amount of time to get really acquainted with that energy, and, you know, really allow the shifts to start to take place. But even then, I often felt like, okay, there's still something more for me here. Like I still need to go back. So just to add that.
Yeah, that's important. I guess that, you know, it's a place that you would go multiple times, or, you know, if you're someone, I know quite a few people are remote that listen to this, maybe that's a place that you live remotely to take in the energy and the lessons that you're meant to take there.
Exactly.
So with that being said, I know that you have one-on-one mentorship open for registration right now. So do you want to talk about who you normally work with and how you incorporate this beautiful modality, for a lack of better term, into your mentorship?
Yeah, so in my mentorship, I find the things that I'm really best at is, again, helping people with sort of bigger kind of transformational points in their lives, right? So being a Scorpio rising, having a big Scorpio signature, my Chiron in the eighth house, which is also Scorpionic, I really help people take their power back, and make the changes that they want to make in their lives. So whether that is career, whether that is like leaving a relationship, whether that is moving, whatever it might be, I help you build a strong, secure foundation within yourself so that you feel secure and steady and strong enough to take that initiative, to follow your intuition, to make the change. So that's why we work a lot with the moon. We work a lot with other various aspects of the chart that really help you build that trust in yourself, in your intuition, and build the supports for you to be able to then make those changes that you want to make. So obviously, coming from my own personal experience of, you know, having left my full-time job in academia and like struggles with anxiety and all of these things. So a lot of like nervous system regulation and things like that. So I'm working in a 3 or 6 month mentorship. Obviously, if people need more time, because these shifts take time to process and to move through, you know, there's options to extend. And I am just in the process of still getting all these details actually on my website. So the best way to talk to me, about this is just to get in touch. And it really, I do really customize it based on the person. So if a person is really interested in astrocartography, we build that in. If
Mhm.
someone is more interested in the herbalism side, we build more of that in. But I do use all of these tools on an as needed basis. I make custom herbal tools for people to help them work with the current energy they're dealing with, whether that is, what's happening in the sky right now, or whether that is depending on where they're living right now. I, guide them through different meditations, energy work, yoga, all the things to really help them kind of come back to their center.
Yes, I love that. You have such a vast array of tools that you have at your disposal that have worked for you in your life that you share so authentically online. So it's very powerful. So if anyone's listening and they're like, yes, I resonate with you, I resonate with your energy, where's the best place for them to connect, to be a
I'm
part of
most
mentorship or just see everything that you have going on?
Yeah, I would say I'm most active on Instagram, so that's usually the best place to check me out. So it's just astrobloom.ca. And you can book a discovery call right through the book now button. And you can also find my website through there. So either of those modalities work really well. I've got all of my handmade ritual tools on the website as well. So you can take a look at those and kind of understand what we're talking about when we're talking about these floral moons and, herbal tools. So yeah, that's the best place.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there any last words that you want to share while we wrap up this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the last piece of wisdom that I want to share is coming back to that theme of like, you are not a victim. Nothing is happening to you, it is happening for you. So even when we're in the depths of really difficult experiences, it's so much easier to feel like a victim. It's so much easier to feel powerless. And I think a lot of people, myself included, for a long time, don't realize that these things are just happening to redirect us on our authentic path. So, yeah, just wanted to share that.
I
And
love
thank you
that.
so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome anytime. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time I'll upload a new video on Thursday. See you in the next one. Bye.